out of the game.
Hi, I'm Kelsa Dickey, the CEO of the Financial Coach Academy and my financial coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. My coaching journey began more than a decade ago with me helping people for free from my dining room table. What was once a little business of mine has grown into a 7-figure company that employs a team of people. My goal is simple, to help you fall more and more in love with financial coaching. I believe financial coaching is the most rewarding way to make a living. If you are an aspiring financial coach or have been coaching for years, I'm here to help you create a business you love that gets your clients massive results. Let's get to it. All right, financial coaches, we are kicking off episode 18, Financial Coaching 201, Your Coaching Model. This is a continuation of episode 17. So if you haven't listened to 17 yet, stop what you're doing, hop on over to 17 and listen to that one first. That was Financial Coaching 101, and we are officially on 201. So last week, I broke down a framework that I use when thinking about my clients' development. Today, we're going to explore how to coach inside of that framework. Today, I want to talk with you about what do you do when the client doesn't see what you're saying? Or when a client can't take action even if they totally see what you're saying. Or if you think the client should do one thing, but they want to do another. What do you do in these situations? Today's coaching model will help you with those situations and many more. The first thing that I want you to know about coaching is that coaching dates back ages. In fact, Plato talked about it in his famous quote, "Human behavior flows from 3 main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge." The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy was first published in 1963. Albert Einstein says, quote, "Everything is energy and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the energy you want and cannot help but get that reality." And you cannot help but get that reality. Excuse me. So sorry, Albert. I just butchered your quote. So let me say it again, Albert. I'm so sorry. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the energy you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. Fundamentally, coaching is an ancient concept embedded in universal laws. It asserts that our life is our own creation. We as a consciousness have the ability to influence and create our own life events. Some words that you can use to explore this topic even more, and I really want to encourage you to explore coaching concepts more so than like financial concepts, okay? So here are some terms that you can just stick in your Google and allow yourself to have fun exploring these topics. The process of change, process of transformation, how your thoughts become your reality, practical application of the law of attraction, cognitive behavioral therapy, the psychology or science behind manifestation. Those are just a few examples. And I am telling you this because when I say that I hope each of us becomes a student of our craft, I am not talking about studying personal finance. I'm talking about studying coaching, human behavior, and it has been around for a while. So there are so many resources that you could use to learn more about this stuff. I like to think about it as figuring out what makes a person tick. Like I talked briefly about last episode, I think I assumed that knowledge or information would motivate a person to take action. I thought that if I educated somebody, they would immediately go and make like a committed decision and like move forward in this really committed way, going down this one path just because they learned something new, right? I think I assumed that knowledge or information would motivate a person alone to take action or to do something differently with their money. But not everyone is motivated by information alone. Coaching helps us help the client to discover what makes that person tick. Also, just a friendly reminder so I can make sure that we are on the same page as we dive into this topic in this episode. Coaching is helping a client navigate the development needed to reach a certain outcome. Coaching is helping a person as they become the person who creates a certain outcome for themselves. Let's make sure we're on the same page on exactly what coaching is. Personally, I resonate with the way Brooke Castillo talks about this concept. So some of the terms I'm going to use in this episode come from her, but there are many experts that exist in a variety of ways that these concepts are broken down. She's just the one that I am choosing to use today. And I highly recommend that you check her out if you're interested. Her name is Brooke Castillo, and it's Castillo. Her website is thelifecoachschool.com. I have no affiliation with her. I'm just passing along someone I have personally enjoyed learning from. Another person is Marissa Peer. That is Marissa with one R and one S. Peer, P-E-E-R is her last name. Also, Brene Brown, I think, does amazing work around thoughts and feelings and that sort of thing. But let's talk about Brooke's sort of coaching model, okay? And again, I'm going to use hers for the terminology that I use, but there's a lot of different ways of breaking down this concept of coaching, okay? Brooke explains coaching using what she calls the model, okay? So the model is 5 key components: circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. And I actually want you to write this down. So literally grab a pen and a scrap paper. It can be something like a Post-it note. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And write these down because I really want you to see it. I want you to write down circumstances, and then right below that, I want you to write thoughts. And right below thoughts, I want you to write feelings. And just below feelings, I want you to write actions. And just below that, I want you to write results. And I'm going to explain this to you, but we're going to start from the bottom of your list and we're going to work our way up, okay? So we're going to start with results. The results you get are based on the actions that you take or don't take, right? And then the actions you take are based on the feelings that you have. Imagine what you would or would not do based on any of the following emotions if you had them, okay? If you were confident or hesitant. If you were overwhelmed compared to clear and focused. If you felt confused compared to if you felt really certain about something. If you felt uncertain. If you felt excited or passionate. If you felt ashamed. If you felt afraid. If you felt committed. Whether you take action or not is based on a feeling that you are having. And the feeling you're having determines the type of action you take, okay? The feelings we have are determined by what we think of something, by the thoughts that we have, okay? And the thoughts that we're having are typically related to the circumstances or about the situation. So the circumstances are simply that. It's just the situation. What is going on? Okay. So let's break this down for financial coaching specifically. Okay. Let's say the circumstances would be the person's financial situation, the numbers, right? The thoughts are what a client thinks about that situation. Let's say in this example, the thought that the client is having is something like, we're in over our head, or I'm never going to get out of this situation. So that's what the client is telling themselves. That's the thought that the client is having, right? Imagine the feeling line now. Imagine how the client feels based on that thought. So if they're thinking we're in over our head or I'm never going to get out of that situation, I think it's reasonable. And again, we're guessing. We would never guess about this. We wouldn't make any assumptions. We would ask the client these questions. But in this case, we can maybe guess that if a client is thinking I'm never going to get out of the situation, how they might be feeling as a result of that thought is I'm deflated. I feel stuck. I'm overwhelmed. I feel hopeless, right? And then the next line, the action line, what they do or the actions they take because they're feeling deflated or stuck, overwhelmed or hopeless, it's reasonable to say that maybe a person in that situation would just ignore it or push the situation aside or sort of feel like it's pointless anyway. And so why would I look at it, right? So then they do nothing. Okay. And then the result is the outcome. The result of doing nothing, of ignoring it, of pushing it aside, possibly the situation doesn't improve or maybe it even gets worse, right? And all of this is the model. Now, let's do it again and let's put a different spin on it. The circumstances are the person's financial situation, the numbers, right? So we already talked about that. The thought is what the client thinks about those circumstances, about their financial situation. So in this case, let's say the client is thinking, we got this, we can figure this out. How they feel as a result of having that thought might be determined or solution focused, right? So if I'm thinking, we got this, we can figure it out, I am probably feeling more determined. I'm feeling more open to ideas, right? So the action is what they do or the actions they take. And again, these are always based on the way somebody feels. This person might take action of like learning and trying new things to solve the situation because they feel determined, because they feel solution focused. They're going to keep seeking out solutions. That's the action that they take. Right? The result is the outcome. And if a person feels determined and solution focused, and so as a result of feeling that way, they are learning and trying new things until they solve the problem, the chances that their situation improves is so much more likely, right? The reason this is so important is because you could have two people with the exact same circumstances, the exact same financial position, same numbers, same situation. And one client thinks, we got this, we can figure this out. And another client thinks, we're doomed, it's impossible. As a result of that thought that each client has, they feel very differently. And then the way they feel determines the actions that they take or don't take, and then that determines the results that the client sees, okay? And the coolest part of all of this, at least in my opinion, is that you can change the thoughts that you have about something. Our clients can change the thoughts that they have about something. I can change what I think of something. So by shifting our thoughts and by helping our clients to shift their thoughts, we can actually create a more positive ripple effect, right? We can actually help them create a more positive result or outcome simply by focusing on the thought that they're having about that, and then how that changes how they feel, the actions they take, and the result they get. And that is coaching. Okay? Circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and then results. Now, it's so clear to me now that I know this model. I can so easily see where I went wrong when I first became a coach. And I'm going to use that word lightly because I can easily see now that maybe I wasn't really coaching. I was definitely more of a financial educator and I was definitely teaching. But that's okay. I definitely missed some key steps in this model. I thought that if I could teach my clients something, essentially if they could just see how their circumstances, or if I could just show them their circumstances, right, then they would take action based off that. In other words, I would totally skip over getting to the heart of what the client thinks and feels about those circumstances, okay? I really thought that if I could paint a clear picture of the circumstances, they would see it in the same way I did. They would think about it in the same way that I was thinking about it. They would feel the same way that I would feel if those were my, financial situation. And therefore, their actions would be really clear and obvious to both of us, right? The client's situation is the set of circumstances or the facts, right? This is the objective part. Your job, my job, all of our job as a financial coach is to paint a clear picture of the situation, interpret what we're seeing, but also make sure that me and the client, we see the same situation in front of us. This is that education phase that I talked about last episode. Are we seeing the same situation here? Do we have all the same information? Or do we have all the same stats? Are we looking at all the same numbers? Is there anything that we're missing? Any details that are important here? Are we on the same page? Do we have the same foundation from which to move forward? We got to make sure we're solidifying the circumstances first before we dive in. Have you ever had one of those disagreements, with maybe a sibling or a really good friend or a spouse possibly, where you're sort of disagreeing about something? You have differing views on what you think you should do, only to realize that one of you actually thought the details of the situation were slightly different. And you have this moment of where it's oh, wait, that's what happened? Or that's how that played out? Well, if that's the case, then I actually think the same as you, and I think you're right, we should do X, right? So in other words, one detail changed about how the situation played out, and that changed what the person thought of the situation, of the circumstances, right? And then you notice that then had a ripple effect. Now I feel differently about it, and now the action that I think we should take also changed, right? In other words, you disagreed on the set of circumstances, and that impacted all of those other things. And the same thing can happen with clients if we're not careful. We want to avoid that happening with clients. So clarifying, here's the situation, or here's the circumstances we're working with, and we're both on the same page. These are the set of facts that we're working with, right? You really want to start there. So for example, let's say a client comes to you with the goal of wanting to pay off their debts, and you've talked with them about why they want to get out of debt. You've got all of their debts in front of you. Here's something that you might say when it comes to the circumstances or sort of the coaching, okay? Here's what the circumstances would possibly sound like. Based on your current income and expenses with no changes, you have $300 extra to throw towards your debt. Based on your debt balances, your interest rates, and other things, again, everything staying the same, it will take you approximately 12 months to get out of debt. Okay, so let's say that you are articulating that, you are communicating that situation to the client. That is their circumstance, right? Based on exactly how it is right now, if no changes were made, based on the debt that you have, the interest rates, the totals, all of that, your income and expenses, $300 extra to go towards your debt. It's going to take you 12 months to get out of it, right? Now, how many of you, and be honest with yourself here, how many of you would go straight into action mode next with this client? So you might say something like, but if you could cut from here and here and here, you'll have $500 extra and get out of debt in 9 months instead. Or maybe you're like, but if you move the debts to a 0% credit card, you could shave off X amount of months because you're going to save an interest, right? In other words, you go straight into action mode. You went from the circumstances straight into, here's some steps I want you to take, or here's some things we could do about this, right? But you totally skipped the thoughts and feeling stages of coaching. Instead, what I want you to do is I want you to embrace the coaching model and really embrace the thoughts and feelings lines of the coaching model. So for example, here's what this would look like instead. Based on your current income and expenses with no changes, you have $300 extra to throw towards your debt. Based on your debt balances and interest rates, other factors, it will take you approximately 12 months to get out of debt. What do you think of that? That's what you would ask the client. You would state the circumstances. You would make sure that they're aware of those, that we're really clear on those. And then you would say, what do you think of that? Maybe they are totally fine with that timeline. Maybe it's better than what they thought, so they actually feel happy and excited. They're like, awesome, I could be out of debt in 1 year, and that leads them to feeling excited and like it's totally doable. So they are ready to take action in order to get the results of being out of debt in 12 months. Or maybe their thought is, I wish it could happen faster. Maybe the thought is, I wish it could happen faster, and that creates a feeling of a sense of urgency or impatience or a desire to do more in order to speed up the results of getting out of debt. If you don't ask what the client thinks of the situation, then you can't assess how they're feeling about it. And so any action you recommend is misguided as their coach. I am going to say that again because I think it's really important. If you don't ask the client what they think of the situation, then you can't assess how they're feeling about it. And so any action you recommend is misguided as their coach. After asking what they think of it, you can then ask them how they feel about that. You can repeat that back to them and repeat back the thoughts that they're sharing with you. It's always a really good move to do that. Like actually repeat back the words that they're using. I'm hearing you say blank. Okay. If you haven't been coached yet, which I highly recommend, I believe every single coach should have a coach. There are so many times in my own coaching experience where my coach will sort of like repeat something back to me that I've said, and like hearing someone else say it sort of doesn't make any sense. And you're like, no, I actually don't believe that. But when we say it ourselves, it's like we've repeated it so many times in our own mind. The thought has run through our brain so many times that when we say it, it's like we're not even really understanding the impact that is having. But when we hear someone else say it, we're like, I don't think that's right, actually. Like, that's not how I feel. That's not actually what I think, right? Asking, then after you ask them, what they think, what they feel, and you've clarified that, then go into action mode based on what they say. This is now the application phase that we just entered into, and we talked about this in the last episode, because we're both on the same page with the circumstances, right? But if the client is like, man, I wish that we could speed that up, now we can introduce a whole bunch of different options for how they could do that. And with each option that we explore with them, we can talk about, this is what that would look like. Here's how you would go about doing that. Here's, what do you think you would feel when you take this step for you? And every time you make a suggestion, you can say, what do you think of this approach? Or do you like this idea? Is this doable for you? Is this a sacrifice that feels worthwhile for you, right? And listen, I'm so sorry. I know some of you are thinking about all of the coaching sessions. You are replaying them in your mind right now, and you're possibly beating yourself up thinking like, oh my God, I didn't do that. I don't do that. I can think of all these client conversations that I had really early on where I think like, oh, if only I could like meet with that client again today and do it differently, I would, right? And some of you are probably listening right now thinking like, shit, I'm doing this wrong. I want you to know that I get it. I have been there. I think about all the clients that I worked with the first couple of years, and I wonder what their results would be had I adopted this model. If these are some of the thoughts that you are having right now, remember that that is affecting how you feel. I imagine if you're thinking like, oh God, I'm not doing this, or I haven't been doing this through all these sessions I've had, and I don't know how to do this, and yada, yada. Like if you're having those thoughts right now as you listen to this episode, I imagine that you might feel a little deflated or discouraged, maybe a little like embarrassed, internally embarrassed. And I want you to remember the way you are feeling will determine what you do with this information. That's the model, right? That is the coaching model. We know that. We know that we all take action based on the feelings we're having. So I want to invite you to shift your thoughts about this if those are some of the thoughts you're having. This is the coolest part of the model. You can change the way you think about this right now. So instead of thinking like, shit, I'm doing this wrong, what if you reframed that, to say, or to tell yourself, I'm a student of this craft. I'm learning new skills every day. I will continuously learn how I can be an even better coach for my clients. This is no different. Or what about this thought? What about this reframe? I helped my previous clients because you did. Just because you didn't apply the model doesn't mean you didn't help them. I helped my previous clients, and I'm going to be able to help my next clients even better now because of this new knowledge and new awareness. Or here's another fun reframe for you. The sooner I embrace this, the sooner I'll be able to raise my prices because the value I deliver will be on fire, right? So imagine that, right? Imagine the difference between thinking like, crap, I'm not doing any of this. I'm a terrible coach. I haven't done this with clients and I should have, and yada, yada, to I'm learning, I'm better today than I was, and my next clients are going to be better because of it. And I get to raise my prices as a result. Right? In other words, can you shift your thoughts about this from something that feels disempowering to one that is more empowering? And then notice for just a second how that changes what you might do with this information. And imagine that your clients are similar. We can tell them all day what to do, or we can help them think differently about themselves, about the situation, about their circumstances, about how they manage their money, and watch them take action from that place. That is coaching, okay? I am really jazzed for the next episode because I'm going to explore these concepts in greater detail with, details about what great coaching looks like, what it sounds like during coaching sessions, and also what it doesn't look and sound like. But let me quickly touch on some of the situations I mentioned at the top of this episode. Before I do that, I do want to just let you know about something really quickly. If you want to expand your skills as a financial coach, and I mean really truly embrace a coaching approach in your sessions, you may want to consider checking out the Financial Coaching Toolkit, which is one of our offerings. It is not available right now currently, but it will be released at the end of the month, at the end of March 2023. The toolkit has been around for years, so I want you to know that. So just because it's getting released at the end of the month doesn't mean it's brand new. We took it down at the end of 2022 because we have been doing a massive revamp behind the scenes, and the new version, I'm excited to report, is amazing, and it is getting released at the end of March. The toolkit is a step-by-step program on how to coach on a variety of financial concepts. And for each concept, we take you through each phase of the framework so that you know exactly how to coach clients on a particular area of their money. So everything from budgeting to getting out of debt to net worth, value-based spending, financial goal setting, communicating with your spouse, dividing financial responsibilities with your significant other, what to cover in your first coaching session, and even a full 90-day financial coaching program that you can put your clients through. It is all inside of the toolkit. So if you don't want to recreate the wheel, but you want to hit the ground running in order to expand your coaching skills, and again, we literally break down each concept into a coaching model. It's not from like education to action, right? That is not coaching. It's how do you help the client apply this information? How do you get to the root of what they're thinking and feeling? What exact questions do you ask? What action steps do you have them take in between coaching sessions in order to deepen their understanding and see what observations they have? All of those things are included in the toolkit for each individual concept that will be listed under the toolkit. So if you want that, if you want to expand your coaching skills, the toolkit is your best friend. Like I said, we're releasing it at the end of the month, so stay tuned for that. If you are not on our mailing list, that's the best place to go to hear about the toolkit first and all of the details. So go to financialcoachacademy.com/subscribe, and we will let you know once it's available. So here is the question that we started the episode with. How to coach when the client can't or doesn't see what you're saying. What do you do? This is the education phase, or the set of circumstances are confusing. That's typically what this means. And anything you can do to make the set of circumstances more visual for the client, the better. Money tends to be this very abstract thing, right? And anytime we can make it visual for somebody with diagrams or pictures, illustrations, drawings, do that. Take what is in your head, coach, and draw on a sheet of scrap paper. This does not have to be fancy. This doesn't have to be a slideshow with a bunch of fancy diagrams that you had somebody create for you. That's not what has to happen. It can be on a scratch sheet of paper. But ask the client, show them this picture and ask the client to explain to you what they're hearing you say or what they're seeing. And that's one way that you can sort of see where are the differences, or how can we fill in the gaps here of maybe where we're not on the same page. Okay. Now, I do want to caution you, coach, please be careful when using a spreadsheet. You may look at a spreadsheet and think it paints a very clear picture for you, but I need you to hear me. That is a skill you have that not everyone has. Some people look at a spreadsheet and immediately feel intimidated. Some don't feel intimidated, but they simply can't decipher what it's telling them as quickly or as easily as you can, especially if this is a spreadsheet or a tool you use all the time for coaching. You've probably seen it a million times, so you can easily decipher what it's telling you, right? Sometimes coaches use their spreadsheets as a crutch. So this is a little side note, point of caution. Please don't do that. Your interpretation of things is way more valuable than some spreadsheet that a client can't decipher. Take what the spreadsheet is deciphering and use that to communicate that. Paint a clear picture of what it's showing you, okay? So another situation we talked about is, how do you coach when a client can't take action even if they understand? What do you do? If a client isn't taking action after they've committed to something, try to determine what they think and how they feel about that action step. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're nervous. What thought are they having that is creating the fear or the nervousness or the worry, right? And then coach them through that. Maybe they change their mind and so they feel hesitant, but they haven't yet realized that the reason they're hesitating is because they changed their mind, right? So they may be able to tell you, like, I just feel nervous, I'm just hesitating. And you can say, why are you hesitating? What's coming up for you? What's going through your mind? When you think of doing this and you stop yourself, what thought comes to your mind, right? What most coaches do when a client says they'll do something, but then don't end up doing it, is coaches tend to give them another action to take. So you might say something like, okay, so how about you do it on Friday and I'll text you to make sure you do it. Or here, let's put a reminder on your calendar and that will remind you to do it, right? Now, that second one, that one about like, let's put a reminder on your calendar, that one is fine if what's happening is the client is truly just forgetting to do the thing. So if they say, well, I'm not taking action because I truly just never even think about doing the thing, like I just forget. It's a new habit, something, it's like a new task that I'm supposed to do, and I genuinely just never think of it. There's never a thought about it in my mind. Then giving them a reminder or something is no big deal. But if there is something else going on and that's why they're not taking action, then that's what we want to get to the heart of. And adding a reminder to their calendar is not getting to the heart of that. Don't stay in the action phase of things. Circle back to the thoughts and feelings the client is having about the action. Maybe they feel overwhelmed. When I ask what step they think about when they start to feel overwhelmed, sometimes they say, I think it's just going to take forever since I've never done it before and I just don't have the time right now. And then I ask, how long do you think it will take? And usually it isn't going to take as long as what the client thinks it's going to take. And I can simply clarify that, right? Or I can say, let's do that step together for the first time, or I'll do it with you, or let's use your coaching session for you to, you have this time carved out. It's what this time is for. So let's use your coaching time so that you can do it and it doesn't feel so overwhelming to you, right? When you think the client, let's move on to the next scenario, right? So what do you do when you think the client should do one thing, but they want to do another? What do you do? I am going to explore this more in depth in the next episode, but chances are high that if the client wants to take one action and you think they should take another, that is likely related to the fact that they think and feel differently about the circumstances than you do. It's not that the circumstances you disagree on what they actually are. It's that what you think of those circumstances, how you feel about those circumstances are different. They probably feel a certain way about the results of that decision too. So they're like, well, I'm going to do it this way. And maybe the results aren't as great as your way, but I feel okay about these results. Because the one thing you want to keep in mind, I didn't touch on this earlier and I probably should have, the results that you get become the new set of circumstances, right? So then it kind of just keeps repeating itself. And so they're saying those results, I'm actually okay with those. They think that those results are okay for them, right? Where you might be thinking, I wouldn't be okay with those results. This is their journey. You are facilitating the decision-making process. You're facilitating that. You are not controlling it. And of course, that is assuming it's not something illegal that they want to do, right? So coaching, like we have talked about through last episode and this one, is all about figuring out what you think of something and how that is impacting how you feel and then the actions you take. In order to honor the coaching philosophy, I like to end every episode with a question for you to ponder or simply consider. The purpose is to deepen your awareness or help you gain clarity on today's topic. It also creates the opportunity for you to share your thoughts with me. I would love to hear from you. If you are watching on YouTube, please drop a comment with your answer to today's question. If you're listening via any podcast player, take a screenshot of the episode, share it on your social media along with the answer to this question, and tag me at Financial Coach Academy or at Coach Kelsa on Instagram. So here is your question, Coach, for today. We are actually going to apply the model to the episode. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think of today's episode, Coach? What thoughts are you having about today's episode all on coaching? How are you feeling about it? What actions do you want to take? And what results do you think that will lead to? What do you think about today's episode on coaching? How are you feeling about it? What actions do you want to take? And what results do you think that will lead to? We are going to continue this conversation in the next episode and talk about what great coaching looks like and feels like during coaching sessions, and also what it doesn't. I believe financial coaching is the best and most rewarding way to make a living. I truly love what I do. If you are ready to learn and see how becoming a profitable, successful financial coach can happen for you too, check us out at financialcoachacademy.com to learn more about our online courses, free trainings, and events. As always, I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for the podcast, submit them at financialcoachacademy.com/podcast. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It would mean the world to me. I will see you next week.